Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Wilson County Board of Education to order. Members of the board, what is your pleasure in regard to the approval of the agenda?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Powell,
I move that we approve the agenda for the Wilson County Board of Education dated December the 9th, 2024. Beanie.
Second.
it has been moved by Mrs. Powell, seconded by Mr. Breen, that the agenda for the December 9th, 2024 meeting of the Wilson County Board of Education be approved. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, let it be known by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. And at this point, it is a five-member board, as we are about to install our new board members. Please note that the meeting is being televised on Spectrum and Greenlight Channel 22 and live streamed through the Wilson County Schools YouTube channel. The public can also view the meeting by downloading the Wilson County Schools TV 22 app and through links on the Wilson County Schools Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages and the Wilson County Schools website. It is the portion of our agenda that we have the new members of the board and the re-elected members of the board be sworn in. Mrs. Harrison, are you going to do them individually? Yes. Representing District 2, Mr. David Batts, if you would come forward, please. If your family would like to come forward with you, please feel free to have them do so. Thank you. You can stand facing.
Good evening. I'm honored to administer the oath of office to Mr. David Batts, who was elected to District 2. Mr. Batts, would you like to introduce your family?
This is my wife Jenna. This is my son Jackson, my son Mac, my son Bo, and then Coco is sitting right over there hiding from everybody. I apologize.
You stand facing the audience. Okay. Please raise your right hand and place your left hand on the Bible.
And wait for Olivia.
Mr. Batts, please repeat after me. I, David Batts,
I, David Batts,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States
that I will support and maintain the laws of the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina,
and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina,
not inconsistent therewith,
incon-
not
not
inconsistent
consistent therewith,
therewith, and that I will faithfully
and I will faithfully
discharge the duties of my office
discharge the duties of my office
as board member
as board member
of the Wilson County Board of Education.
of the Wilson County Board of Education.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I have some documents for you to sign. Can you use my pen, please? It's 3 of them. One more. Thank you.
Mr. Batts, I think you're going to join us up here at the table. Mr. John Kyle for District 4.
Would you like to introduce your family?
This is my wife, Jessica. The kids say the grandma.
Please raise your right hand and place your left hand on the Bible and repeat after me. I, John Cowell,
I, John Kyle,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
and maintain the Constitution
and maintain the Constitution
and bylaws of the United States
and bylaws of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
and laws of North Carolina,
and laws of North Carolina,
not inconsistent therewith,
not inconsistent therewith,
and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
discharge the duties of my office
discharge the duties of my office
as board member
as board member
of the Wilson County Board of Education,
what was that?
of the Wilson County Board of
Wilson County Board of
Education.
Education.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
And Mr. William Blake Boykin, who was re-elected for District 6.
Would you like to introduce your family?
My wife, Brittany.
I am honored to administer the oath of office to Mr. William Blake Boykin, who was re-elected to District 6. Please raise your right hand and place your left hand on the Bible. Mr. Boykin, please repeat after me. I, William Blake Boykin,
I, William Blake Boykin,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
and maintain the Constitution
and maintain the Constitution
and laws of the United States
and laws of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
and laws of North Carolina,
and laws of North Carolina,
not inconsistent therewith,
not inconsistent therewith,
and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
discharge the duties of my office
discharge the duties of my office
as board member of the Wilson County Board of Education.
as board member of the Wilson County Board of Education.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the organization of the board, as is following our policy, occurs each December. I'm going to turn the meeting over to the superintendent for the purpose of the election of a chair.
Okay. At this time, I'll open the floor for nominations for chairman.
Dr. Mills,
Yes, sir.
I would nominate William Blake Boykin as chairman.
Second.
Okay. There's a nomination for Mr. Boykin as chair from Mr. Breen, second by Ms. Boyette.
Dr. Mills,
Yes, Ms. Powell.
I'd like to nominate Christine Fitch for the board chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, second by Dr. Fitch. Any more nominations? Okay. I need a motion to close the nominations for chairman.
Dr. Mills, I move to close the nominations for chairman.
Second.
Okay. A motion was made by Mr. Breen and properly seconded by Ms. Powell. The nomination is closed. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Let the record reflect the motion carries unanimously. Okay, at this point, all in favor of Mr. Boykin for chairman, please raise your hands. 2, 3, 5. With the vote, Mr. Boykin has been selected as chairman with a vote of 5-2. Names that did not raise their hands are Ms. Powell and Dr. Fitch, casting the dissenting votes. Congratulations, Mr. Boykin. You're now chair. Turn the meeting over to you.
All right. So, nominations for vice chair.
Mr. Chair, I would like to nominate Mr. Ryan Breen.
Second.
I'll second.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I'd like to nominate Dr. Christine Fitch.
I'll remove my name at this point. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Are there any more nominations? Then I guess, do we even carry a vote on this?
You want to
All right,
close by acclamation?
all right, then we'll close by acclamation. So next on the agenda is going to be the Pledge of Allegiance. It's led by Ms. Powell.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda, we have the approval of the minutes.
Mr. Chairman,
Dr. Fitch?
I move that the minutes of November 25th, 2024, both the special board meeting and the regular board meeting, be approved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Dr. Fitch and a seconded by Mr. Breen that we approve the minutes of
25th.
November 25th special board meeting and the November 25th regular board meeting. All in favor?
Does that include the revisions that were at our seats
Yes,
instead of the original?
yes.
It does.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Dr. Mills?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Few items to share, board members, audience members. We were very excited and wanted to share that the Springfield Middle School 6th and 7th graders and their teachers were able to settle into their new mobile unit classrooms on December the 2nd. They've spent the first 14 weeks of school in shared spaces after the tornado destroyed those wings on August the 8th. Gosh, it seems, that doesn't sound like that long, but that's a long time to be in temporary space. The two, and I use this word intentionally, spacious mobile units, they're really nice. Each consists of 8 classrooms with ADA accessibility, internet access, door card access, security camera coverage, and fire alarm systems. The teachers whose classrooms were destroyed have been able to begin to purchase items for their mobile unit classrooms using funds that were raised by the generosity of the community. In total, more than $30,000 was raised for that. Insurance funds will also be available at a later date for replacement needs. We're working through that. Dr. Williams and his staff are actively working with the architect and builder on the reconstruction plan for the 2 damaged wings, and that process should begin soon. And I want to thank the Wilson Times for their great coverage of the mobile units, and also EdNC for an article as well. Board members, a copy of those articles were placed at your seats and can be found there for you to review. I want to thank everyone who supported us during this process, and I really wanted to thank the students and the staff and the families again for all their patience and support for a situation that was made much better by the fact that everyone worked together. It has been a truly awful event, but it was one that was made so much better to handle because of the care and relationships and the support that we had of everyone that worked on that. It was amazing and still is. And I know this can be very challenging times, but I was very proud of our students and staff and families. They really made it work. Ms. Thomas and her staff should be commended, as well as that whole community. And I'd like to thank Dr. Williams and his staff especially for all the work they did behind the scenes to make those classrooms appear and work so flawlessly for us so quickly. They're not mobile units as you would think of. They're modular units, and they are gorgeous. And we're very excited about that being in place. So if you get a chance, please come by and let us take you on a tour. My other two items are that our early colleges have already started their recruitment process for next school year. Early college staff have visited the 8th grade classrooms in our middle schools to share information, and the information meetings are being held for families this week. The online application period begins December 11th for 8th graders who are interested in attending either the Wilson Academy of Applied Technology, that's WAT, or Wilson Early College Academy, WECA, next year. The application will be housed on the district and early college websites beginning December 11th. The application deadline is December the 20th. If you have any questions or need assistance completing the application, please call or email the early colleges. And those are very popular application periods and processes, so I would suggest you call early and often. Finally, I would like to wish and hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving break. And I cannot believe it's already winter break, Christmas break. And our traditional schools have an early release day on, no one's keeping track of it, but I'll just share it, on December the 20th. I know that was foreign to everybody that's a parent and or student in this district, but early release day is on December the 20th. And then students do have to return January the 6th. Our early colleges start break next week, and I want to wish all of our students well as they take exams, and hope that everyone has a really safe and relaxing holiday, enjoys time with family and friends. And Mr. Chair, that's all I have.
All right. We do not have any public input tonight.
Mills, new board members, old board members. My name's Adam Sapurik. I'm a partner with Anderson Smith White, your independent audit firm. And in front of you should have a bound set of financial statements as well as a 3-page letter addressed to the board. That 3-page letter is just to let you know, as the governing body that hires us to conduct the audit of management, that we had no disagreements with management, that we were able to perform our audit without any issues obtaining documentation or receiving management representations on the facts within the document. There were no new accounting GASBs incorporated in these statements, so they look the same as last year. And just basically letting you know that the audit went as planned. As with every presentation, the bound set of financial statements, nearly 80 pages long, but I really think there are a handful of pages that make up the most important schedules within the statements. And so I'm going to go through those and also point out like our official letters found within that audit report. So if you would turn to page 1. So you hire us to conduct the audit and issue an opinion over the financial statements. Good, bad, or indifferent, whether the dollars are going up or going down, the purpose of the opinion is just to let you know that the financial statements are accurate. So page 1 is the start of the opinion letter, and the first section is the opinion paragraphs, and it basically states that we believe these financial statements accurately reflect the net position and the fund balance for Wilson County Schools as of June 30, 2024. This is what's considered a clean, unmodified opinion letter. So that opinion is over your net position and your fund balance. And like I said, there's a lot of information within these documents, and you're really gauged throughout this document on two essentially equities, your fund balance and your net position. Net position takes your fund balance, which is your current assets minus your current liabilities, and adds things like the value of the buildings on hand, but subtracts things like the portion of the state retirement plan that is portioned out to you. Wilson County Schools does not pay retirees directly, but you pay into the pension plan through the retirement rate of about 25 cents for every dollar. And so you contribute to the pension plan, but it's not your liability. It's really a state liability. But new GASB's over the last 10 years has required us to essentially show within your net position your component of that state liability, since you are the ones who received the benefit of the individuals that retired from the school system. So that being said, your net position is all out of whack with non-current assets, non-current liabilities that aren't really yours. And so whenever you're reading through the first 10 pages, when it's talking about what went up and what went down, what changed, just note whether you're reading about net position or whether you're reading about fund balance. To me, fund balance is the most important numbers within the statements. It represents the funds you have available to appropriate in future budgets. It's essentially your net cash on hand, your net working capital on hand. So if you would, turn to page 14, Exhibit 3. Exhibit 3 is a balance sheet for all of your governmental funds. You have two types of funds, governmental funds and business type funds. You have a general fund and your other special revenue fund, which house the majority of your fund balance, the local dollars available for appropriating. You also have two large revenue sources in the State Public School Fund and Federal Grants Fund, but they do not carry fund balance. Those funds are received through allotments. You request the dollars as you spend them. If your allotments are not spent within the year, sometimes they carry over, sometimes they don't. Some of them are use it or lose it. So you're never carrying essentially working capital on hand in those two funding sources. So when you look at the general fund, which is the first column, down at the bottom, total fund balance for the year was $16,538,000. That's a decrease of $1.6 million from last year. Of that $16.5 million, $540,000 of that is made up of inventory. You can't spend inventory. So that's a non-spendable component of your equity. So when you want to look at what you really have available to spend, it's those last four numbers. The $15,000 reserve for stabilization by state statute, that's just to cover receivables. State laws are written so that you don't spend money you haven't received in the door yet. So you have a component that you just can't spend because it's still, as of June 30, hasn't been collected as cash. You also have $3 million assigned for the next year's budget. So in your 24-25 budget resolution, the budget at this point is expected to use $3 million of fund balance. So that is essentially available. And then you have $402,000 designated for retirement assessments, spiking payments for future retirees, and $12,577,000 is left unassigned. That decrease of $1.6 million is largely due to a $1.3 million transfer from the general fund to the capital outlay fund. You've had capital needs, as Dr. Mills said, between what happened in August and just maintaining buildings across the county. You've been building fund balance in this fund for the last 3 or 4 years, thanks to the COVID-19 funds received, the education stabilization funds received over the last 3 or 4 years. And so this is really the first year in a handful of years that you're using fund balance. But again, a lot of that is due to a transfer of $1.3 million. Again, you've got the highest fund balance you've probably had in years. At the beginning of the year, and nearly $18 million. And so we knew this time was coming, a time when you would stop receiving the indirect benefit of all of those federal funds and start having to look to fund some of the programs that those COVID-19 funds funded locally. So the first component of that wasn't necessarily for those programs, it was capital outlay transfer, but really you're in a position of looking at your local fund balance more as what's available to spend rather than how much did it go up this year. Your other special revenue fund has $5 million of fund balance. That's an increase of $754,000 from last year. Now, of that $5 million, $1.8 million of it is actually restricted for specific grants. So the general fund is used for your county funds. Everything else interest, indirect cost, tuition and fees, all the miscellaneous revenue, Medicaid, NC pre-K, all of that runs through the other special revenue fund. And some of those sources are restricted. Some of them are state or federal grants or specific grants, private grants received to be spent for a particular reason. And so those are technically restricted components. And then the 3.1 million is really the unrestricted part of the fund balance held in Fund 8. So in a nutshell, if you're really looking at what you have available to spend, the 3 million from the general fund, the 12.5 million from the general fund, and the 3.1 from the general fund. Those are unallocated sources of fund balance, and then 1.8 million to go towards specific programs. Have to be spent a certain way, but still available. The capital outlay fund has $2,987,000 of fund balance, an increase of $679,000, again, largely due to that transfer from the general fund. And then across all of your schools, $857,000 on hand, a decrease of $66,000. This is the funds made up of fundraisers, athletic gate sales, basically the dollars held at each individual school. Any questions on the balance sheet there? If not, if you turn 2 pages, this is the income statement that resulted in those increases and decreases of fund balance. Real quick, a couple of things to point out here. Revenues are across the top. Then in the center, the expenditures, and at the bottom is those various changes of fund balance. But you can see that you received $24.5 million in the general fund from the county. That's an increase of $715,000 from last year. The state public school fund, again, doesn't carry fund balance, but provides $80.7 million of your funding. That's an increase of $1.7 million from last year. One of the big numbers that has really fluctuated over the last few years is that federal grants revenue, $35.2 million. Of that $35.2 million, 23.5 of that is education stabilization funds. Those programs are set to expire by the end of this month. A lot of the expenditures in this year were for construction and air quality standard expenditures, new roofs, HVACs. There's a lot of availability of those funds to be spent on, again, air quality standards, and a lot of those projects are really kicked up into place during the 23-24 year and need to be completed or essentially almost completed by December 31. So this was the last bit of those funds to be spent. There'll still be some for them the first 6 months of the 24-25 year. But we really saw a significant jump in this year, again, as you ramped up a lot of that construction on HVAC systems. The 22-23 education stabilization funds were $13.7 million, so again, a $10 million bump. But when all those education stabilization funds are all spent out, that federal grants fund will go back to the typical, 10, 12, $13 million that makes up the Title I, EC grants, the long-standing federal grants. So, again, significant fluctuations the last 3 years, 4 years because of those education stabilization funds. And then $3 million collected in the other special revenue fund, $3.7 million of capital outlay, and about $2 million flows through the individual schools. Any questions about this income statement for those funds? Yeah, certainly.
What percentage of our total balance does our fund balance represent?
Total fund balance as a percentage of revenues?
Of the total, if a county system is supposed to, have 8%, and, okay, how does our school, what are those numbers? The longstanding notion of 7% or 8% for local governments is really geared towards taxing authority governments. You don't regulate your revenues. They're allotted to you from the state, federal, local governments. And so
the governmental entities like a city and a county who actually tax citizens and create their own revenues, the recommendation is 7-8%. School systems are different because they get such large chunks of state and federal dollars. So a lot of times when you look at how much your fund balance is, the question becomes, should you look at it as a percentage of your full budget or just your local budget? So if you're looking at 16.9 million on 23 million of local funds, that's a significant component of local. But when you look at it as 16 million in your local fund out of 149 million, you're about 10, 11%, which is still well-funded even when looking at that 7 and 8% requirement. But I don't think a school system should be looked at the same way as a state or as a city or a county, again, because a lot of those revenues are allotted just based on your ADM, based on your how much your county contributes versus the federal government. A lot of that just depends on the demographics, the number of Title I kids in a school system.
How does our Wilson County Schools fund balance compare to other school systems in North Carolina?
So as far as ADM goes, you're a relatively small district with just 10,000 kids, but your fund balance as a percentage of your revenues is high. I would almost liken you to Wayne County schools. They're a little larger. But there's several districts that have high Title I populations that received vast sums of education stabilization funds to the tune of 40, 50, 60 million. I haven't added up your total ESF funds over the last 4 years, but I do know just in the last 2 years, what did I say? 23.5 plus 13.7. So right there is nearly $37 million of federal funds received in just 2 years. And it's given you the opportunity to increase fund balance to levels you have not seen before. And so you're getting a very temporary bump in fund balance that you've not had. If you were to go back and look at the amounts from 10 years ago, you've never been this strongly funded or this well proportioned as far as fund balance goes. But in my mind, that really is temporary when these education stabilization funds are spent out and you have to start funding a lot of these summer schools, guidance counselors, nursing staff, anything that was been paid for federally over the last 3 years now becomes either a local expenditure or a program that has to be cut. So not all districts fared the same in their benefit of the federal allocation of funds. But again, just with your population base and your Title I percentages, the allocation of those federal funds was significant compared to other districts. So you might have received more federal funds than districts 3 times your size just because of those Title I percentages. So, you are certainly well-funded, more fund balance than you've ever had. But I also know that going forward, that fund balance, if you look at the budget already, expected to use $3 million. If that really does come to fruition, you've got 5 years of that before you're out of money again. So this is the top of the roller coaster. Right before things start going down, you start using that fund balance. It's just a matter of how much fund balance do you use every year? How much are you going to spend on capital outlay from local? That transfer of 1.3 million, is that a one-time thing, or are there going to be other cases of that money being spent on the facilities? So again, I don't know if that answers your question. You certainly do have a good amount of fund balance relative to where you stood 5-6 years ago. Yeah.
Any other questions?
All right. You also have 2 business-type funds, if you would turn to page 22. So business type fund is just a category. It's different than your governmental funds because it sells a product. Your child nutrition, your school food service fund sells meals. Your child care fund sells services. So they're accounted for differently. For these funds, net position and fund balance are one and the same. There is no fund balance that converts over to net position because the value of the assets are directly recorded within this balance sheet. The portion of the pension liability that is attributed to the child nutrition employees from Wilson County schools that was attributed from the state, it's all right here as a liability. So instead of looking at net position for these two funds, I look at cash on hand, and that's the top number of Exhibit 7, page 22. Cash on hand for the School Food Service Fund was $4.6 million, an increase of $1.5 million from last year. And the Child Care Fund, $402,000, an increase of $95,000. This program also has had significant fluctuations in the last 3 or 4 years, again, because of COVID-19. The reimbursement rate received while all kids ate for free through the COVID-19 feeding program was significantly higher than it is now. So this fund also benefited from increased cash flows. But the fact that you were able to add $1.5 million in the 23-24 year when all of the COVID-19 increase in reimbursements is done away with is really a testament and a positive. There's a lot of school systems that have a school food service fund that in future years will become a cash flow problem and a cash drain on your local funds. When the child nutrition fund, school food service runs out of money, it has to be funded locally. Every kid has to eat. It's a federal program, but it is managed by the school system, and so any shortfall in revenues or in cash needs is funded locally. So to be able to add cash on hand while serving in the current environment of the reimbursement rates, which just have not risen with inflation, is just it's a financial burden you do not have to worry about because they're cash flowing positive. As we know, cost of everything's gone up, including cost of food, cost of salaries and benefits. But the key to this program is high participation. When you're part of that CEP program, all your kids can eat for free. The more meals you can serve, the more plates you can put in front of kids, the more reimbursement. So you have kind of like a set cost when it comes to salary and benefits. There's only so many staff at each kitchen, at each school. So those sunk costs are going to be the same whether that school is serving 400 meals or 600 meals. So maintaining high participation is the key to keeping this fund profitable. And for this year, again, it added $1.5 million. When you look at some of the expenditures, page 23 is the income statement for those two funds. Food cost went up $285,000. Salaries and benefit cash went up $356,000. So again, $500,000 increase in costs. But what also happened was there was a $848,000 in federal reimbursements. That increase in reimbursements was while reimbursement rates were going down because participation increased significantly. Any questions on those two funds? After that, there are pages and pages of footnotes going over all of your various assets and liabilities, whether they're current or non-current, part of the fund balance or part of the net position, roll forwards of your fixed assets. There's about 8 pages of information on those state pension plans and how the actuaries calculate your portion of it. There's also additional schedules on budget versus actual. If you want to look at a more detailed local income statement, page 58 is a budget versus actual, and it just breaks down the expenditures and or the revenues a little bit better so you can see what makes up the county appropriation versus fines and forfeitures or interest or miscellaneous. It also, again, shows budget versus actual. Throughout the budget versus actual schedules. There were no budget violations. But finally, if you would turn to page 63. So part of the presentation I said would be the informational components as well as a talk through your numbers. Page 63 is the beginning of 3 more letters. So part of the audit is financial statement related, but part of the audit is also compliance related. You have state and federal programs. A certain percentage of those dollars have to be audited for compliance with every year. But the first page of 63, the first letter, is actually over internal controls. So while conducting the audit of the financial statement and also while conducting the compliance audit, if we noted any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in controls, we would report them here. We noted no deficiencies that we consider significant or material weaknesses on the control structure, over financial reporting, or over compliance. 2 pages later, the second letter. Now, the next 2 letters are actually, they read the same, so I'll kind of combine them. One is over state programs and one is over federal programs. These are actual opinion letters again, and opinion paragraphs at the first section. And it basically states that we believe Wilson County Schools complied with all compliance requirements over state major programs and federal major programs. Again, 2 letters that read the same. Basically, we noted no dollars spent out of compliance with your state or federal major programs, no question costs, no amounts that had to be refunded back to the federal government or state government because they were misappropriated or misspent. And one final thing to point out, page 75. This is a schedule of all of your state and federal awards. We talked about the education stabilization funds. Those are the COVID-19 funds. This just shows what that $23.4 million is made up of. These are your COVID-19 programs. And again, the 2 big ones, the $6 million and the $16 million, those are heavily related to construction. But these are also, you can also see the other programs that are set to expire that are currently funded by the federal government for school turnaround, National Board of Professional Teaching, math enrichment, summer career acceleration, homelessness. So yeah, these are those federal programs that make up the education stabilization funds. And that's all I've got, unless there are any questions.
Fellow board members, any questions?
Can we get that one more time?
Yep. Next year.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
It's always
appreciate
good
your
to have a
time.
Clean audit.
Mr. Chair, I just have one comment. Thank
All right.
you for such a thorough report. This is a lot of information, which we clearly see took a lot of time.
It does. So I don't, it's always a balance of how much do you say, because, 20 minutes does not get into the 200 hours it takes to request all of the information, the hundreds of invoices and payroll checks, the information from all of your directors who are getting audited that year, the various departments that have to provide reports. It's a long process, and to come up here and talk about it for 20 minutes or whatever, it doesn't do it justice, but I also know what we go over there, that's the end result, and that's the numbers I think that matter to you, as well as those letters letting you know that the audit went well. So, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for, to your staff who, again, just, we come in for two times, half a week in the spring and a full week or so, most of the week in the summer. And it's a lot, and we require a lot of attention, and your staff really puts our needs first, which helps make for an efficient audit so that we can get through this, can get it written and presented to you.
I would like to commend Ms. Collins and all of the people in finance and all of the administration for the outstanding job that is done in keeping all of our records straight, keeping us in compliance, and doing the outstanding job financially.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right, moving on, we've got contracts requiring board notification, and that's instructional services. And Dr. Wilson? Is that right?
Ms. May.
Ms. May?
So we have three contracts that we're bringing to the board for information this evening. The first is with CDWG, and it is for 27 computers for a FIKE computer lab. That is for a CTE classroom. Those are to be purchased out of CTE funds. The second is Follett Software. This is the software that we use to manage all of our library resources as well as all of our assets. The amount for that is $58,280.37. And then the last is Soft Choice Corporation, and it is for our Microsoft renewal licenses for staff and students. And that amount is $68,849.53.
All right, this is informational, so we don't have to carry a motion on it. Are there any questions? All right. And moving forward, revised policies. Now, Dr. Wilson.
So before you in your packet, you see several revised policies for a first reading. And those came to us by way of the School Board Association and their recommendations. They have been reviewed not only by administration, but as well as our attorney.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
if we could go to policy, revised policy 3225, 4320, 4312, 7320 on line 168.
Which policy was that?
The
Technology
technology
responsible
responsible use, 3225,
68,
line 168, please,
red section.
red section. Can we just get a grammatical check on that instead of, should that be whose activities, who activity?
Yes.
Okay.
And-
Mr. Chair, going back to the parental involvement one, that 1310-4002, one question, whenever we said that we would be able to make a change so that if it was like checking ears or eyes, something, is that incorporated into this new policy?
The health screening when we talk about.
The health screening would be an opt.
Yeah.
You wouldn't opt in, you
That
would
was right.
have to opt out. Okay, is that included here? Because I couldn't find it. I mean,
I think it's, Mr. Chair, the line 239 speaks to the child's participation in any non-emergency invasive physical examination or screening that is required as a condition of attendance. This is something we would have to give notice to the parent to
So-
opt out of.
so it's an interpretation of it, not an actual change in policy.
Correct. Yes, and there are differing views, Ms. Boyette, about whether or not it should be included or excluded, as you're pointing out. But I've given legal advice to the district that for simple medical screening, meaning eyes and dental, there's no treatment involved. It's really just giving information to the family to make a decision about whether or not to do treatment, and therefore it would be opt-out.
So when those screenings occur, the students would be included in unless
Correct.
there has been an opt-out
Yes.
from the parent.
Yes, Dr. Fitch.
Any more questions or comments? All right, then these will come back to us next month.
That's correct.
And revised administrative regulation 3464.
Yes, you'll see several revisions And if you look at the end of that particular regulation, you'll see that it's not been long ago since we brought it to the board, back in June. And every time there's a change in the law, there's a change in our regulation or our policy. And you can see that some of the main ones were about not including a foreign language, as well as you have, starting on line 98, for students who would enter projecting for the first time in ninth grade in 26, 27, and what their course of study would look like. Those are the two high parts.
Okay, so now will that come back to us
No.
next meeting, or is this just information?
It's just for information.
Perfect. All right,
In 3420, I have a question on line 36. That's the student promotion and accountability.
What line, Ms. Boyette?
Line 26 is all the red portion.
Gotcha.
Okay, my question is all of this new, or help me understand have we always had a career development plan for moving into ninth grade? It's saying they can't be promoted
This is
without
brand
one.
new.
So this is brand new?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So this will be something that we will have to start doing for every child moving
Yes.
from 8th to ninth
Yes.
grade?
So is that time sensitive and will this be in effect for the students who now are getting ready to move into ninth grade?
Yes, so this is in effect for this year's eighth graders, our current eighth graders. And our current eighth graders completed the career development process through their counselor this fall. So we are set to have those completed by the end of December. And then from, December till the end of the year, as new students enroll, we will ensure that new enrollees have a career development plan in place.
We didn't ask for the waiver of
Okay.
the
Second
first read.
Right.
Simply because we're already working on that plan.
So you anticipated you knew
Yes.
this was going to happen before it just came into
Yes.
our policy?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am, yeah, it was based on legislation passed last year, so we had the summer to plan for
Okay.
the implementation of it.
any more questions? All right, moving into action items. Bedingfield High School Culinary Arts Design.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the board, at your table, you will have a draft design of the culinary arts classroom at Bedingfield High School. The team met on-site today at Bedingfield High School this morning and reviewed options for the culinary arts classroom design. That team included myself, Mr. Greg Woodard, Robin Mays, Zach Marks, Matthew Creighton, Jenny Hayes, principal at Bedingfield High School, Ms. Ebony Lineberger, who is our culinary arts teacher at Bedingfield High School, the assistant principals at Bedingfield High School, Ms. Kelly Lindsay, Mr. Reggie Harris, and also Ann Collier and John Ham from Oakley Collier. And we do have Ms. Collier with us tonight from Oakley Collier, who has worked on this design. The design that we presented tonight is a conceptual design. Our team that met looked at the options available for the space that we had at Bedingfield High School, and our team determined that we believe that the conceptual layout of these classrooms is the best use of the space that we have, both for classroom instructional space for hands-on learning in the kitchen, as well as the cafe space that is required for these classrooms as well. What I would note is that inside of the hands-on kitchen area, the kitchen learning area, there will be some changes in terms of equipment as we continue to work through the DPI requirements for what is required for the classrooms. However, the layouts that you see conceptually is how we will have everything placed once we do determine exactly what pieces of equipment need to go into that specific area. And one other feature is that when we are finished with the equipment portion inside of this conceptual design, we will have the ability and capacity to be able to teach any of the programs within that curriculum. So pastry arts, pastry art design, things of that nature. So anything within that realm, we'll be able to teach that in this space. So wanted to bring that to the board tonight for approval of this conceptual design so we can continue working even within the space for the equipment.
Question,
Yes, ma'am.
are we anticipating this being ready for the next academic year?
Yes, ma'am. So our goal is to have this ready for August of 2025.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the conceptual design for the Bedingfield Culinary Arts redesign.
It's been moved by Dr. Fitch and seconded by Mr. Breen that we approve the design for the Bedingfield High School Culinary Arts design. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Let's see. Now we are at our section of going into closed.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Byrne.
I'll try to tackle this one.
All right.
I move that the Wilson County Board of Education go into closed session to consider confidential personnel matters as considered in North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A1 and 6 and 115C through 319 through 321 to consider confidential student matters as provided in North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A1, North Carolina General Statute 115C402, and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, 20 U.S. Code 1232G, and to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privileges provided in North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3.
Second.
All right, it's been moved.
I think you have to repeat the motion.
So, it's been moved by Mr. Breen and seconded by Ms. Powell that we go into closed session to consider confidential matters, personnel matters, as provided in NCGS 143-318.11A1 and 6 and 115C-319 through 321 to consider confidential student matters as provided in North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A1 and North Carolina General Statute 115C-402 and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act 20 USC 1232G, and to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3.
Welcome to the show, bro.
Are there any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion carries unanimously. We are adjourned to closed session. Well,